They say a wedding is where love begins, but for me, it was where respect ended. I stood quietly in the back watching my daughter smile in her white gown, until her groom, the man she trusted, poured champagne on my head and said, "You don't belong here." He didn't know who I really was. He didn't know what I'd sacrificed, but that night he was about to find out. The late afternoon sun bathed the vineyard in a golden haze. Rows of white chairs lined the lush green field, soft violin music drifting through the air. It was the perfect California wedding, elegant, expensive, and meticulously planned. I stood near the back, hands clasped together, watching my daughter Lily glide down the aisle in her ivory gown. My throat tightened. She looked radiant, my little girl, now a woman stepping into a new life. I should have been sitting in the front row, but instead I'd been quietly placed near the back, beside the catering table. A mistake, the planner said. I knew better. It wasn't a mistake. It was Matthew's doing, Lily's fiancé. He didn't want me there. The whispers had started months ago. He'd called me the overbearing parent, too opinionated, embarrassing. I wasn't rich and I didn't speak his family's language of quiet arrogance. I was a school custodian, a janitor who worked nights to put Lily through college. I didn't wear designer suits or drive Teslas like the people filling these seats, but I had one thing that no one else did: love that never broke, even when everything else did. As Lily reached the altar, I caught her eyes for a moment. She smiled, small but real. It was enough to remind me why I was here. Then I saw Matthew look toward me and his jaw tightened. I could almost read his thoughts. You don't belong in this picture. The ceremony moved quickly, filled with laughter and polished perfection. When the priest announced, "You may now kiss the bride," the guests cheered. Cameras flashed. And just like that, Lily was married. During the reception, the night turned colder. Laughter echoed across the courtyard, but it felt distant, like I was watching through glass. I stayed polite, sipping water, smiling when people passed. Then came the toasts. Matthew's father, a real estate tycoon, gave a booming speech about family pride and how wonderful it was to welcome Lily into their successful lineage. Then came my turn. Lily had asked me days ago to say a few words. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew my presence already rubbed Matthew the wrong way. Still, I rose. My hands trembled, but my heart spoke steady. "I may not have much," I began, but every night I worked late cleaning classrooms, I dreamed of this day. I wanted my daughter to find someone who'd cherish her heart the way I've cherished her smile since the day she was born. The crowd fell quiet. A few people smiled kindly, but Matthew rolled his eyes, and when I caught it. When I finished, I lifted my glass. "To Lily and Matthew, may you always remember what real love looks like." Polite claps followed, but Matthew didn't toast back. He turned to his groomsmen and whispered something. They laughed. Something deep inside me twisted, but I stayed calm. This was Lily's night. Hours later, the lights dimmed. The DJ switched to slow music. Lily and Matthew danced under fairy lights while I stood alone near the bar. That's when Matthew approached me. His tie loosened, a glass of champagne in hand, a smirk across his face. "So," he said, enjoying the view from the back row. His voice was slick with mockery. I forced a smile. "It's enough just seeing her happy." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You know, you didn't really fit in today. My family noticed. Lily deserves a new chapter, not leftovers from the past." Before I could reply, he tilted his glass and poured the cold champagne over my head. Gasps filled the air. A few guests laughed. Others froze. Matthew chuckled, stepping back. "Oops," he said. "Guess some people just attract mess." I stood there, dripping, humiliated, as the music faltered and the crowd turned away. But beneath the embarrassment, a strange calm grew. Because I knew something he didn't. The night wasn't over, and neither was I. They say every parent dreams of their child's wedding day, but dreams cost money, and mine came at the price of sleepless nights and calloused hands. 20 years earlier, I was a single parent in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Ohio. Lily was 6, small enough to fit her hand in mine when we crossed the street. Her mother had left months after her birth, said she wasn't ready to be a parent, so it was just me and Lily. I worked double shifts, cleaning schools and small offices. At night, when she fell asleep on the couch, I'd quietly tuck her in, then count the coins in a jar labeled Lily's future. Every penny went toward books, piano lessons, and later, her college fund. I wanted her to dream big, to walk into rooms I never could. But dreams come with their own kind of pain. There were nights when the car wouldn't start, when dinner was just peanut butter and toast. Once Lily came home crying because a classmate mocked her second-hand clothes. She was 10. I told her, baby, what you wear doesn't define you. What you become does. That night she hugged me tighter than ever. When she turned 16, she got a scholarship. At her graduation, she stood on stage, valedictorian cap shining under the lights, and said, "Everything I am today is because of one person, my dad." The crowd clapped. I cried. Years passed. She moved to California for college, UCLA. I visited once a year, never wanting to interfere, always proud from afar. Then one day she called, her voice trembling with excitement. "Dad, I met someone." "His name's Matthew," I smiled. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." At first he seemed charming, polite on the phone, always saying sir and thank you. But the first time I met him in person, something felt off. We met at a fancy restaurant in downtown LA. I arrived in my best shirt, pressed, but old. Matthew glanced at it once and smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides judgment. "So, Mr. Carson," he said, sipping his wine, "Lily tells me you work in education." "I do," I said. "Been with the school district for over 20 years. He nodded. Administration?" "No," I said. "Custodial staff." His expression flickered for just a moment. He didn't know how to respond. That was the first time I saw it. The quiet shame in Lily's eyes. She tried to cover it up, saying, "Dad's the hardest working person I know." But I could tell she felt torn. Between love for me and the pressure of the world Matthew belonged to. Still, I didn't blame her. I knew what it was like to feel small in big rooms. After dinner, I shook Matthew's hand. His grip was firm, but his tone cold. "Pleasure meeting you," he said. "You've done well for your background." For your background. Those words stuck with me like splinters, but I let it go. Because love makes you patient. Especially a parent's love. I didn't know then that the boy with the polished shoes and the perfect smile would one day pour champagne on me and awaken a strength I didn't know I still had. It's strange how disrespect rarely comes in one big moment. It creeps in quietly, through tone, looks, and silences. After that first dinner, I tried to see the good in Matthew. Maybe he was nervous, maybe I was reading too much into things. But small things kept piling up, like a glass filling drop by drop until it overflowed. He never called me Dad or even Mr. Carson again. Just Lily's father. When I'd call Lily and Matthew picked up, he'd say, "She's busy, can I take a message?" Like I was a distant relative instead of the man who raised her. Lily started to change too. Not her love. She still called every Sunday. But her tone was softer, more cautious. Like she was walking on eggshells around both of us. Once I mailed her a small handmade gift and an oak frame. I'd carved with her childhood photo inside. A week later, she texted, "Thanks, Dad. It's beautiful. We'll find a spot for it." But when I visited months later, I saw it tucked in a closet, still wrapped. Instead, the walls were covered in modern art, cold, expensive pieces Matthew had chosen. It wasn't about the picture. It was what it meant. My presence didn't fit into our new world. Still, I stayed quiet. Because parents do that. They swallow pain so their children can stay comfortable. Then one weekend, Lily invited me to their engagement party in San Francisco. It was a rooftop event, string lights, champagne towers, guests in designer suits. I wore my best blazer again. It wasn't new, but it was clean, pressed, and decent. When I arrived, I saw Matthew talking to his friends near the bar. His eyes landed on me, then flicked over to my shoes, my jacket, my face, and as if calculating how out of place I looked. "Hey," I said, trying to stay upbeat. "Congratulations again, son." He gave a half smile. "Thanks. The bar's over there. We have an open tab." He didn't introduce me to anyone. I found a quiet spot near the edge of the rooftop, watching the city lights shimmer. I reminded myself why I came, not for me, but for Lily. She looked so happy, laughing with her friends, her ring glinting in the light. But then I overheard something that froze my breath. One of Matthew's friends said, "So, Lily's dad's a janitor, right?" "Bold move marrying down." Matthew chuckled. "Yeah, but she's worth it. Plus, my family said every dynasty needs its charity project." They laughed. My stomach turned. I looked at Lily. She didn't hear it. She was glowing, radiant, lost in her new world. I stood there quietly, forcing a smile when she looked my way. She waved, and I waved back and pretending I didn't just hear my life turned into a punchline. Later that night, when I got home, I sat in the dark kitchen with my old coffee mug, the one Lily had painted for Father's Day when she was 8. On the side, in shaky letters, it said, "Best Dad in the World." I ran my thumb over the faded words and whispered, "You'll see, Lily. One day you'll remember." The wedding was 3 months away. Lily called to say she wanted me there for the rehearsal dinner. Of course. "Dad, you have to come," she insisted. Her voice had that familiar warmth again. I said yes before she even finished the sentence. When I arrived, it was held at a vineyard estate owned by Matthew's family. Marble fountains, crystal chandeliers, everything glistening like a magazine spread. Guests were laughing, sipping wine, and exchanging stories. I stood near the buffet table, awkward but content just watching Lily smile. Matthew's mother, Victoria, approached. Tall, elegant, diamonds everywhere. She gave me a polite but distant smile. "So you must be Lily's father," she said, her voice sweet but cold. "Yes, ma'am," I said, offering a handshake. She hesitated, then lightly tapped my hand instead, like touching something fragile. "I've heard a lot about you. I hope all good things," I said with a small grin. She smiled faintly. "Well, we all come from different worlds, but love brings people together, doesn't it?" Her words stung, sugar-coated dismissal. Throughout dinner, people toasted, laughed, and swapped stories about vacations and careers. When the spotlight turned to me, someone asked, "So what do you do, sir?" I smiled proudly. "I work for the public school system." "Oh, teaching?" one woman asked. "No, I'm part of the custodial staff," I said. "Been keeping schools clean and safe for over 2 decades. A small silence followed, a quick awkward. Then the laughter continued elsewhere. Matthew smirked, swirling his wine. "Hard work's still work," he said, like it was charity praise. I caught Lily's glance. Embarrassment flickered in her eyes, but she masked it with a nervous smile. Later that night, I helped stack chairs and clean up. Habit, I guess. As I gathered plates, I heard someone whisper, "Does he always do that?" followed by quiet giggles. When I turned around, Matthew's friends looked away. Lily came over flustered. "Dad, you don't have to clean up. The staff will—" I smiled gently. "Force of habit, sweetheart," she exhaled. "I know, I don't want anyone to think—" "To think what?" I asked softly. She looked away. "Nothing, it's just, you don't need to help tonight." I nodded, trying to swallow the ache in my throat. As I drove home that night, the laughter from that vineyard still echoed in my head. I realized something harsh. No matter how hard I worked, how much I gave, some people would always see dirt on my hands instead of the heart behind them. But I also knew something they didn't. People like me, we've been underestimated our whole lives. And one day that underestimation becomes our power. The morning sun crept over the Napa Hills, painting the sky in rose gold. It should have been a day of joy. I woke early, ironed my shirt, and stared at my reflection in the motel mirror. Lines etched across my face. Lines carved by time, work, and love. I adjusted my tie, the same one I wore to Lily's high school graduation. It wasn't fancy, but it meant something. Before leaving, I opened the small box. I'd brought a silver bracelet engraved with the words, "Forever your biggest fan, Dad." I imagined her smile when I'd give it to her. When I arrived at the vineyard, the place looked like a dream. White roses everywhere, golden chairs, a piano playing softly. Guests arrived in luxury cars, their laughter floating in the air. I found Lily near the bridal suite, adjusting her veil. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who once twirled in her mother's old scarf, pretending it was a wedding dress. "Dad," she gasped, eyes watering. "You made it." "Of course," I said, smiling. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." She hugged me, tight, trembling. "Thank you for everything you've done for me, I mean it." I held her for a moment. "You just make sure you're marrying love, not image." She paused. "What do you mean?" I smiled softly. "You'll know if it ever changes." Before she could answer, Matthew entered. He was in a white tuxedo, perfect as a magazine model. "Oh," he said, looking between us. "Didn't realize visiting hours started early." Lily frowned. "He's my father, Matthew." "I know," he said lightly. "Just keeping things on schedule." His voice had that undertone again, polite enough to sound civilized, sharp enough to sting. I stepped back. "I'll leave you two to get ready." As I walked out, I passed Victoria, Matthew's mother. She smiled thinly. "You must be proud. Not everyone gets to see their child marry into such prestige." Proud of my daughter? Yes, I said calmly. Prestige doesn't raise a child. Love does. Her smile faltered. Well, she said, let's hope she remembers that. The ceremony began an hour later. I took my seat, the back row. It didn't matter. I was there. I watched Lily walk down the aisle, the crowd admiring her, the music swelling. I saw her lips whisper, I love you, Dad, before she reached the altar. And in that moment I knew, no matter what happened next, no insult or humiliation could erase what we'd built together. But as the sun set and the celebration began, I had no idea that before the night ended, the groom's cruelty would turn into his downfall, and the truth about who I really was would silence every whisper in that vineyard. The reception glittered with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the scent of roses floating through the cool California night. Guests danced beneath strings of fairy lights. Waiters moved gracefully between tables carrying trays of champagne. I stood quietly by a pillar near the back, the place I'd been assigned. I didn't mind. I just wanted to see my daughter smile. Then came the moment that changed everything. Matthew strutted toward me, a champagne flute in his hand. His tie loosened, his grin wide and smug. Enjoying yourself, sir? He said. Just proud, I replied. She looks happy, and that's all that matters. He smirked. You know, I've got to hand it to you. You cleaned up well. He leaned closer, voice low. Guess all those years mopping floors finally paid off. I froze. The laughter from his groomsmen nearby echoed like knives. Matthew turned toward the crowd and raised his glass. Ladies and gentlemen, he shouted, his voice cutting through the music. Let's toast to new beginnings, and to letting go of old baggage. A few guests chuckled. Others looked confused. Then, in one deliberate motion, he tilted the glass and poured the champagne over my head. The golden liquid ran down my face, soaking my shirt, my tie, my pride. The courtyard fell silent. Someone gasped. A camera flash went off. I could feel it. That sickening click of embarrassment immortalized forever. Matthew laughed. Oops. Guess old habits die hard. Don't worry, I'm sure you're used to spills. Lily's eyes widened in horror. Matthew, what the hell? But he brushed her off, still grinning. Relax, babe. It's just a joke. The crowd murmured, and some awkward, some disgusted, some amused. I stood there frozen, the humiliation burning deep. But behind the shame, a quiet rage rose, not wild, but calm, heavy, unstoppable. I met Matthew's eyes, wiped my face with my sleeve, and said softly, You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Then I walked away. Slowly, deliberately through the crowd that parted like waves. Lily followed me out to the garden, tears streaming. Dad, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize for him, I said quietly. You didn't do this. But everyone saw. Good, I said, my voice steady. Then they'll see what happens next. She looked confused, but I simply smiled. Go back inside, sweetheart. Let the show continue. Because I knew what was coming, I sat outside beneath the vines, away from the noise, letting the night wind dry my soaked shirt. The stars above the vineyard seemed to whisper, calm, patient. Inside, I could hear laughter trying to rebuild itself. The party was limping back to life. But the atmosphere had shifted. Whispers were spreading like wildfire. Did you see what he did? Was that her father? Unbelievable. A waiter, a young man named Carlos, who'd been serving all night, would approached me nervously. Sir, are you okay? I smiled faintly. Been through worse. He hesitated, then said, That man, the groom, he shouldn't have done that. Everyone's talking. Let them talk, I said. Truth has a way of finding its stage. Carlos nodded, unsure what I meant. A few minutes later, Lily came back out, eyes red. Dad, I can't believe this. I don't even know what to do. Just breathe, I told her. You don't need to do anything. Tonight we'll show people who they really are. Are you leaving? She asked. I shook my head, not yet. Because the truth was, I had planned something long before this night began. See, Matthew's family didn't know that for the past year. I'd been quietly building something of my own. All those years cleaning schools and offices weren't my whole story. 10 years ago, I had invented a simple sanitation system and eco-friendly cleaning device, and sold the patent to a startup that grew faster than anyone expected. I didn't brag about it, didn't change my life, didn't flaunt the money. Why? Because I wanted to see who people were before they saw what I had. And tonight, they'd finally see. The DJ announced it was time for the final toasts. The microphone stood at the center of the dance floor. Matthew's father went first, long, Pompous speech about family legacy and success. Then came Matthew himself. He smirked, glass raised. To my beautiful wife and to our families, even the ones who cleaned up the path that got us here. Polite laughter. A few eyes turned toward me. Lily looked sick. Then before the DJ could move on, I stood. Mind if I say something? The room went still. Matthew's smirk faltered for the first time. I walked to the center, my shirt still slightly damp from champagne, but my head held high. I took the mic. I wasn't going to speak again tonight, I began softly. But since we're celebrating truth and family, maybe it's time everyone here knows who I really am. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I was a janitor for 25 years. I cleaned schools, offices, hospitals, anything that kept a roof over our heads. I did it proudly. But what most people don't know, I paused, meeting Matthew's eyes, is that those long nights gave me ideas. I designed a sanitation system to make cleaning faster and safer. A company bought it. That company now operates in 12 states. Gasps, whispers, I never mentioned it. Because what mattered most to me wasn't what I earned. It was who I raised. And that's Lily. People began to clap, softly at first, then stronger. Matthew stood frozen. His parents looked stunned. I turned to him. You said I don't belong here. Maybe you're right. I belong with people who know how to treat others with respect, no matter their background. Then I looked toward Lily, but you, sweetheart, you belong anywhere your heart is kind enough to stand. Lily burst into tears, rushing into my arms. The crowd stood, clapping, some even cheering. Matthew stammered, You lied. I didn't lie, I said calmly. You just never asked. You were too busy judging. The DJ, sensing the energy, turned the mic toward the guests. Someone shouted, Tell him off. Others murmured in disbelief. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth had already shouted louder than anything I could say. I handed the mic back and turned to leave. But not before the crowd began chanting softly, To the Father. For the first time that night, Matthew looked small. By the next morning, the story had already spread. Someone had recorded the entire scene. The champagne, the insult, and the reveal. It went viral overnight. Millions of views. Headlines read, Groom publicly mocks father of the bride, instantly regrets it. Matthew's company, a luxury tech startup, issued a statement, distancing itself from his behavior. Investors pulled out. Sponsors withdrew. Within a week, his reputation crumbled. Within a month, his job was gone. Lily tried to hold the marriage together for a few weeks. But you can't build love on humiliation and arrogance. One morning she called me, her voice trembling. Dad, I'm coming home. When I opened the door, she stood there, tired. Mascara streaked, but finally free. I hugged her, no words needed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I smiled softly. You don't need to apologize for seeing the best in someone. Just don't forget to see the best in yourself next time. She cried for a long time that night. I just sat with her, the way I had when she was a little girl afraid of thunderstorms. Days turned into weeks. She healed, slowly, beautifully. Found a new job, new friends, a new life that didn't depend on anyone else's validation. As for Matthew, the last I heard, he'd left town. Some said he moved east, chasing another business idea. But I didn't care. His downfall wasn't my revenge. It was just the echo of his choices. A year later, Lily remarried, this time to someone who truly saw her. A quiet ceremony in a small garden, with only close friends and family. No luxury, no press, no drama, just love. As she walked down the aisle again, she looked radiant. Not because of the dress or flowers, but because she finally looked free. When it came time for speeches, she took the mic, her voice steady. I used to think love was about perfection, she said. But I learned that love is about truth. And the truest love I've ever known is the one my father gave me. Tears rolled down my face before I could stop them. She continued. He was humiliated in front of hundreds, but he stood tall. He showed me that dignity isn't about wealth. It's about knowing your worth even when others can't see it. The guests stood and applauded. I tried to wave it off, but inside I felt peace. After the ceremony, Lily and I sat together under the same oak tree where she'd said her vows. You know, Dad, she said softly, I used to be embarrassed about where we came from. I'm ashamed of that now. I smiled. Never be ashamed of your roots. They're what keep you standing when the world tries to knock you down. She laughed through her tears. You always know what to say. I looked at her wedding ring, simple, gold, nothing flashy. That's because I learned something too, I said. Real value isn't about what shines the brightest. It's about what lasts the longest. She leaned on my shoulder. I love you, Dad. I love you more, kiddo. As the sun set, painting the sky in amber light, I thought about that night at the vineyard, the laughter, the champagne, the humiliation, and I realized something powerful. That moment wasn't the end of my dignity. It was the beginning of hers.